Our objective right now is to review how to use our fractions to complete the operations of addition, subtraction, and multiplication. And when we are doing this, we're going to review it in two different segments. We're going to think about how our addition and subtraction is totally separate from our multiplication. So first we're going to review addition and subtraction and think about how we use our skills of finding equivalent fractions.
Our quick review on adding fractions. The biggest thing to remember is your denominators need to be the same. So to find an equal denominator here, I could multiply the 3/8 by 4 on the top and bottom, and 1/4 by 8 on the top and bottom. But a quicker way is I could just change this to eighths. So now I have 3/8, because I didn't change my first fraction, plus 2/8. Notice I'm taking the time to take my problem, change my denominators where necessary, and rewrite my problem to stay nice and organized. It's worth the time to rewrite your problem and be organized. Now I remember that I'm adding across my numerators for 5, and my denominators stay the same, 4/8. So my answer is 5/8. Here we have our next example, 5/6 plus 3/9. Take the time to pause the video and solve on your own. I'm now going to start solving, so pause it if you haven't. So looking here, I know that 6 and 9 can both go into 18, multiplying by 2, and multiplying by 3. So I'm going to take the time to set up my new problem so I stay organized. 15/18 plus 6/18 gives me an answer of 21/18. Now you may have found a different answer because you used different common denominators. Another popular one would be out of 54 as a common denominator. And that's fine. Use your fraction skills to see if these two answers that you found are equal. Here we have our subtraction problem, but we know it's the same strategy. Find common denominators. So pause the video and solve this problem to come back and check your work. So as I start solving now, I'm going to use 15 as my common denominator, and I'm going to rewrite my problem to stay organized. So I have 10/15 minus 6/15. I need to remember that I'm subtracting here, so I'm subtracting my numerators for an answer of 4/15. So our key strategy to remember is common denominators for our adding and subtracting fractions, and make sure you are taking the time to write out your work of showing how you are changing your fractions, multiplying the numerator and the denominator. You don't want to forget to change the top as you change the bottom, and that's the most common mistake we'll see.
It's very important when you are adding and subtracting fractions that you're taking the time to remember you need common denominators and to set your problem up with those common denominators and write your work out nice and neat so you can stay organized. When we start to look at multiplying fraction, it's a reminder that it's actually a little bit easier in terms of your setup. You don't have to have the same denominators when you're multiplying. And we're going to take a quick review as to how we are multiplying fractions.
Taking a look at our multiplying fractions, this is actually an easier strategy. We don't need to worry about finding common denominators. We can simply multiply our numerators and multiply our denominators for an answer of 15/48. So the process is much simpler than adding or subtracting, but we need to remember that this strategy is only for multiplying. So here we have another example. Take the time to solve this on your own, pause the video, and come back to check your answer. So to solve this, all I need to do is multiply across my numerator and multiply across my denominator for 5/28. So again, our process is very simple, but we have to remember that this is just for multiplying fractions. It doesn't change our strategy for adding and subtracting.
One of the biggest keys for working with fractions is it's a new concept. And if you think about how long you've been adding, subtracting, and multiplying whole numbers, it's now become something that you're very used to because you've practiced it over and over again for years. So it's very important for you to do the same similar practice with your fractions. The biggest part to remember is that your addition and subtraction are very similar, but they are totally different than your multiplication. And we don't want these three to be confused with each other. You think about these in a similar way with common denominators, and you think about this in a similar way with its process of going across the numerator and denominator. And keeping them separate is your most important part.